Last Wednesday, Harry called me at work. "Tanya, I have to cancel dinner tonight. My parents flew in from Portugal this morning. They want to meet with me alone about something important." I found this strange. He had mentioned his parents exactly twice in 8 months. Never said they lived in Portugal. Never talked about visiting them or them visiting him. He always changed the subject when I asked about his family. That evening, I drove to his apartment. His Camaro wasn't there. I had been paying the insurance on that car for 3 months. I called him. No answer. I texted asking if everything was okay with his parents. He replied 2 hours later saying they were having a long conversation and he would call me tomorrow. I couldn't sleep that night. Something felt wrong about the whole situation. Harry had been acting different lately. More distant. He used to text me constantly throughout the day, but for the past 2 weeks, his messages had become shorter and less frequent. Thursday morning, I checked Instagram. Harry had posted a photo the night before at Romano's, the expensive Italian place downtown. The caption read, "Family dinner," with a heart emoji. I could see part of a woman's hand in the corner of the photo. Not his mother's hand. The nails were painted bright red with ring designs I recognized. I zoomed in on the photo. The hand belonged to someone young. The rings were delicate, expensive looking. Harry's mother would be in her 50s. This was a younger woman's hand. I had seen these exact rings before, but I couldn't remember where. That afternoon, I went through Harry's Instagram more carefully. I found photos from last year before we started dating. In several of them, he was with a blonde woman named Stella. Her account was public. I scrolled through her recent posts and recognized the rings immediately. She was wearing them in multiple photos. Stella had moved to Seattle 8 months ago for work. That was exactly when Harry and I started dating. Her most recent posts showed her back in our city. She had moved back 3 weeks ago. The same time Harry started acting distant with me, I realized the woman's hand in Harry's restaurant photo belonged to Stella, his ex-girlfriend, the one he claimed meant nothing to him when I had asked about her months ago. Friday evening, I decided to go to Romano's myself. I needed to see what was really happening. I called Harry first to see if he wanted to have dinner there. He quickly said no, claimed it was too expensive, even though I always paid for our meals anyway. I drove to Romano's at 7:30, the same time Harry had posted his photo the night before. I parked across the street and waited. At 8:15, Harry's Camaro pulled into the parking lot. He got out with an older couple and a blonde woman, Stella. I grabbed a hoodie from my back seat and put on a baseball cap I kept in my car. I went inside and asked the hostess for a table. She seated me one table away from where Harry was sitting. I kept my head down and pulled the hood up. They couldn't see my face from their angle. Harry held Stella's hand across the table. The older woman, who I assumed was his mother Priscilla, smiled at Stella warmly. His father Leonard raised his wine glass in what looked like a toast. "Mom, Dad, this is Stella, the love of my life. We're back together," Harry announced proudly. Priscilla clapped her hands together excitedly. "Oh, wonderful, darling. What about that other girl you mentioned, Tanya?" Harry laughed loudly. Leonard joined in, chuckling as he sipped his wine. "That pathetic girl? She's just my walking ATM. I've been using her for months while I got Stella back. She pays for everything." I pulled out my phone and started recording audio under the table. I needed to capture this conversation exactly as it was happening. "My car, my clothes, even my phone bill. She covers it all," Harry continued. "I'll dump her next week once Stella moves back in with me." Leonard nodded approvingly. "You're smart, son. Why work when some desperate girl will pay for everything? That's using your head." All four of them burst into laughter. "I can't believe she actually fell for it. You told me she was pretty, but I didn't think she'd be this gullible." "Pretty desperate," Harry replied. "She thinks I love her. Keeps talking about us moving in together, getting married someday. I just nod and smile while she keeps paying my bills." Priscilla leaned forward with interest. "How much money has she given you in total, sweetheart?" Harry calculated in his head. "Around 4,000 so far. Maybe more if you count everything. She bought me watch last month, paid my car insurance for 3 months, got me those shoes Stella wanted me to have." I had indeed bought him everything he mentioned. The watch had cost me $600. I had worked overtime shifts at the call center to afford his car insurance payments. I had skipped meals and canceled plans with friends to save money for the clothes and shoes he said he needed for job interviews. Stella pulled out her phone and started scrolling. I should thank her myself for taking such good care of my boyfriend. What's her Instagram handle? I want to see what this walking ATM looks like. "Don't do that," Harry said, reaching across the table to lower her phone. "I need her to keep paying until you're completely settled back here. Then I'll block her on everything." Leonard raised his glass again. "Here's to my brilliant son for finding such an easy solution to his financial problems. No need to work when you've got a sugar mama." They all clinked glasses while I sat frozen at the next table. 8 months of my life. 8 months of believing Harry loved me. 8 months of sacrificing my own financial security to help someone who saw me as nothing more than a bank account. I stopped the recording and quietly stood up. I left a $20 bill on my table for the water I had ordered and walked calmly toward the exit. Harry had no idea that I knew the truth now. He had no idea that I had recorded every word of his confession. He was about to learn exactly what happens when you try to use the wrong person. First update. The comments on my first post have been incredible, and so many of you were asking what I did after I left that restaurant. Well, sit down because this is where things got really intense. After I walked out of Romano's, I sat in my car for maybe 5 minutes just staring at my steering wheel. My hands were shaking, not from sadness but from pure rage. 8 months of my life. All those times I worked double shifts just to afford his car payments while he was planning his future with someone else. But here's what really got to me. The way they were all laughing. Like I was some kind of joke they were all in on. Harry's dad raising his glass and calling me a sugar mama, while his precious son bragged about using me. The way Stella was scrolling through her phone wanting to see what this walking ATM looked like. These people didn't just see me as stupid. They saw me as entertainment. I drove home in complete silence. No music, no phone calls to friends, nothing. Just me and this growing volcano of anger that was about to explode all over Harry's pathetic life. When I got to my apartment, I looked around and started noticing all of Harry's stuff everywhere. His expensive gaming headphones on my coffee table, the ones I bought him for his birthday. His clothes hanging in my closet next to my work uniforms. His protein powder and vitamins taking up half my kitchen counter. His collection of sneakers lined up by my front door like he owned the place. That's when something clicked in my brain. This asshole had been slowly moving his stuff into my apartment over the past few months while telling his ex-girlfriend that I was just a temporary ATM. He was using my place as free storage while he waited for Stella to come back and set up their real life together. I started grabbing his things. The gaming headphones went into a garbage bag. His clothes came off the hangers and got shoved in after them. His shoes, his toiletries, his books, his stupid collection of cologne bottles. Everything went into bags. I was moving like a woman possessed, and honestly, it felt amazing. But throwing his stuff in bags wasn't enough. This piece of garbage had humiliated me in front of his entire family. He had turned me into a punchline for their family dinner conversation. So I took those bags outside to the sidewalk and started pulling everything out. His jeans landed in a puddle from yesterday's rain. His precious Jordan sneakers got tossed across the concrete. Those expensive cologne bottles? Opened them up and poured them all over his gaming equipment. The smell was overwhelming. But watching that cologne drip all over his $500 headphones was absolutely therapeutic. I made sure to spread everything out really well across the sidewalk and the small front yard area. His clothes were scattered everywhere, some hanging from the fence, some just thrown in random piles. It looked like a tornado had hit a douchebag's bedroom, and I was so proud of my work. Then I went back inside, changed into comfortable pajamas, made myself a huge bowl of ice cream, and sat down to watch Netflix. For the first time in months, I felt completely relaxed. No worrying about Harry's bills. No calculating how much money I needed to save for his next emergency. No listening to him complain about his life while I worked overtime to fund it. Around 11:30, I heard Harry's car pull up outside. Then I heard his car door slam. Then I heard him yell, "What the fuck?" so loud that dogs started barking in the neighborhood. I looked out my window and watched him frantically trying to gather his stuff off the sidewalk. He was shoving wet clothes back into bags, trying to wipe cologne off his electronics, picking up shoes from random places around the yard. He looked absolutely panicked, like he couldn't understand how his perfectly organized scam had suddenly exploded in his face. He started pounding on my door about 5 minutes later. Really aggressive, angry pounding that made my neighbors turn their lights on. I opened the door but kept the chain lock attached so it would only open a few inches. Harry's face was bright red and he was breathing like he had just run a marathon. Behind him, I could see Stella sitting in his Camaro. Apparently, she had come along to witness whatever confrontation he was planning to have with me. "Tanya, what the hell is wrong with you? Why is all my stuff destroyed outside? Are you having some kind of mental breakdown?" I looked at him through that small opening in the door and felt completely calm. "Oh, I cleaned out some clutter from my apartment. I figured you wouldn't be needing it here anymore since you're moving in with the love of your life next week." The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might pass out right there on my doorstep. He started stammering, trying to figure out how I could possibly know about Stella moving back, about their plans, about any of it. "I don't know what you're talking about, Tanya. You're acting crazy right now. Let me inside so we can talk about this like adults." "Adults?" I laughed so hard I almost choked. Adults don't use people as walking ATMs while planning their real relationships behind their backs. That's when Harry realized I had been at the restaurant. I watched his brain trying to process how this was possible, when I could have been there, what exactly I had heard. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "You were spying on me?" he finally managed to say. "That's psychotic behavior, Tanya. You need help." "I need help?" I was still laughing. "Harry, you spent 8 months pretending to love me while stealing my money to fund your actual relationship. But sure, I'm the one who needs help." He started getting really aggressive then, pushing against the door, trying to force it open wider. "You can't just throw my stuff outside like garbage. Some of that equipment cost thousands of dollars. You're going to pay for whatever got damaged out there." "Actually, I think you'll find that most of it was paid for with my money, so technically I was just throwing out my own stuff." That's when Harry completely lost it. He started screaming at me through the door, calling me every horrible name you can imagine. He said I was pathetic, desperate, ugly, stupid, basically confirming everything I had heard him say to his family at dinner. "You know what, Tanya? Good. I was going to dump you anyway. You're worthless and pathetic, and I can't wait to be done with this whole charade. Stella and I have been laughing about how easy you were to manipulate this entire time. I could hear Stella in the car telling him to calm down, probably worried about the neighbors calling the police. But Harry was on a complete rampage now, saying things that I'm pretty sure the entire street could hear. You think you're so smart, but you're just a sad, lonely girl who was willing to pay thousands of dollars for a guy to pretend to love her. At least now I don't have to keep pretending that touching you doesn't make me sick. That last part actually made me smile. Because Harry had just confirmed every single thing I had suspected about him, and now I had neighbors as witnesses to what kind of person he really was. I closed the door and turned off all my lights. Harry kept pounding and yelling for another 10 minutes before Stella finally convinced him to leave. I watched from my bedroom window as they drove away, and I could see them arguing in the car, even as they turned the corner. Christine from next door came over the next morning with coffee and told me she had gotten the whole thing on her security camera. Apparently, she started recording when she heard the yelling, just in case she needed to call the police. So now I have video evidence of Harry having a complete meltdown on my doorstep while his new girlfriend watched from the getaway car. But honestly, guys, I thought that was the end of it. I thought Harry would disappear into his happy new life with Stella and I would never have to see either of them again. I was so wrong about what was coming next. Second update. Okay guys, I thought Harry's screaming match on my doorstep was the grand finale of this whole mess, but apparently this manipulative asshole wasn't done with me yet. The comments on my last update have been amazing, and honestly, all your support has been the only thing keeping me sane through what happened next. So the morning after Harry's tantrum, I woke up to my phone buzzing with calls from my mom. She had called me 6 times before 9 a.m. on a Saturday, which meant someone had definitely been filling her head with lies. When I finally answered, she was in complete panic mode. Tanya, Harry called us this morning and he's very worried about you. He says you had some kind of breakdown and destroyed thousands of dollars worth of his belongings for no reason. He thinks you need professional help before you hurt yourself or someone else. I could not believe this piece of garbage had called my parents to make me look like the crazy one. He was trying to turn my own family against me after I caught him red-handed planning his future with another woman while using my money. My mom kept saying Harry had sounded so genuinely concerned and that destroying someone's property wasn't how mature adults handled breakups. She wanted me to come over Sunday to discuss how I was going to apologize to Harry and pay for everything I had damaged. I hung up on her, which probably just proved Harry's point about my unstable behavior. But Sunday morning, I went to Christine's apartment and got a copy of that security camera footage from Friday night. We burned it onto a DVD and I took it straight to my parents' house. Watching Harry's meltdown from the camera angle was even better than experiencing it live. You could hear everything. Him calling me pathetic and worthless, admitting he was planning to dump me anyway, bragging about how easy I was to manipulate. The footage showed him pounding on my door like a maniac while Stella waited in his car. My parents' faces went completely white when they heard Harry screaming about how touching me made him sick. My dad immediately started apologizing for not believing me, and my mom was crying about how convincing Harry had sounded on the phone. But that victory felt short-lived because Harry apparently wasn't done trying to mess with my life. Tuesday afternoon, he showed up at my apartment building again. But this time, he wasn't crying or begging. He looked completely different. Confident, almost smug, like he was enjoying some private joke. He was wearing new clothes that I definitely hadn't paid for, and he had this arrogant expression that made me want to punch him in the face. When I tried to walk past him into the building, Harry stepped in front of me with this fake, friendly smile. Hey, Tanya, I just came by to pick up some things I left at your place. You know, important stuff that I need back. I looked at him like he was insane. Harry, I threw all your stuff outside Friday night. There's nothing left in my apartment that belongs to you. But he kept insisting there were items I had missed, things that were really valuable to him that he couldn't replace. He wanted to come upstairs and look through my closets and drawers to make sure I hadn't accidentally kept anything. The whole thing was obviously bullshit. Harry just wanted an excuse to get inside my apartment and start some kind of confrontation. I told him absolutely not and tried to push past him, but he grabbed my arm and wouldn't let me go. Come on, Tanya. Don't be difficult about this. I'm being really reasonable here, just asking for my own belongings back. Unless you're planning to keep my stuff as some kind of weird shrine to our relationship? He was talking loud enough that other people in the building lobby could hear every word. A couple of my neighbors were staring at us, and Harry was clearly enjoying the attention. He wanted to make a scene and embarrass me in front of everyone. I jerked my arm away from him and told him to leave or I would call the police. But Harry just laughed like I had said something hilarious. Go ahead and call them. I'm sure they'll be very interested to hear about how you destroyed thousands of dollars worth of my property in a psychotic rage. I've got photos of everything, Tanya. Documentation of all the damage you caused. That's when I realized Harry wasn't here to get his stuff back. He was here to intimidate me and show off how untouchable he felt now that he was back with Stella. He wanted to prove that I couldn't do anything to hurt him and that he could still control me whenever he wanted. Over the next few days, Harry started showing up everywhere I went, but not in a desperate stalker way. More like he was deliberately trying to rub his happiness in my face. I would see him at the coffee shop I always went to, sitting at a corner table with Stella, both of them laughing and acting like they were having the time of their lives. When I walked into the grocery store Thursday evening, Harry and Stella were in the checkout line right in front of me. Harry made sure to speak extra loud when he told Stella how much he loved her and how amazing their life together was going to be. He kept glancing back at me to make sure I was listening to every word. Friday afternoon, Harry showed up at my workplace again, but instead of coming inside, he parked his Camaro right in front of the building where everyone could see it. He and Stella sat in the car for over an hour, obviously waiting for me to come outside so they could make some kind of grand gesture. When my shift ended and I walked out to the parking lot, Harry rolled down his window and called out to me, "Hey Tanya, I wanted to thank you for helping me realize what I was missing. Being with Stella again has shown me what real love actually feels like. I hope you find someone who appreciates you someday." Stella was smiling and waving at me like we were old friends, probably enjoying the whole performance as much as Harry was. They drove away laughing, and I could hear Harry's music blasting from his speakers as they turned the corner. But the worst incident happened Saturday morning when I was leaving for my weekly grocery run. Harry was waiting outside my building again, leaning against his car like he owned the whole street. This time he was alone, but he looked even more confident than before. When he saw me coming down the front steps, Harry pushed himself off his car and walked over like he had every right to be there. "Tanya, I've been thinking about our conversation the other day, and I realized I wasn't completely honest with you about something." I kept walking toward my car, but Harry followed right beside me, talking the whole time. "The truth is, I never actually loved you. Even from the very beginning, it was always about Stella for me. You were just convenient while I was waiting for her to come back. But I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything you did to help me get through that difficult time." He was smiling while he said this, like he was doing me some kind of favor by being honest about how much he had used me. Like I should appreciate his candor about treating me like a disposable bank account for 8 months. When I reached my car, Harry actually had the nerve to lean against the driver's door so I couldn't get in. I know this probably hurts to hear, but I think it's better for both of us if you understand the reality of our situation. You're a nice girl, Tanya, but you were never going to be enough for someone like me. Stella and I are just on a different level. That's when I completely lost my shit. I started yelling at him about what a pathetic excuse for a human being he was, how he was going to end up alone and miserable because nobody decent would ever love someone so selfish and manipulative. I told him he was a loser who couldn't even pay his own bills without exploiting women who were too good for him. Harry just stood there grinning while I screamed at him in the middle of the street. He looked like he was having the best time of his life watching me lose control. When I finally ran out of things to yell, he just shrugged and walked back to his car. "Thanks for the entertainment, Tanya. This has been really fun. Take care of yourself." He drove away still smiling, probably rushing back to tell Stella all about how crazy his ex-girlfriend had acted in the parking lot. I realized that Harry was getting some sick satisfaction out of these confrontations. He enjoyed seeing me upset and angry because it proved to him that he still had power over my emotions. Every time I reacted to his provocations, it fed his ego and made him feel like he had won some kind of game. Anyway, that's where things stand right now. Harry seems to think he's won some kind of prize and keeps trying to rub it in my face every chance he gets. Honestly, I'm just hoping he gets bored with this whole revenge tour and finds something better to do with his time. I blocked his number after the parking lot incident, so at least I don't have to deal with his texts anymore. Hopefully he'll move on and focus on his amazing new life with Stella instead of bothering me. We'll update if anything else happens, but fingers crossed, this is finally over. Final update. It's been about a month since my last post. Guys, I cannot even begin to describe what happened this week. Remember how I said Harry was acting all high and mighty with his victory lap around town? Well, karma just delivered the most brutal reality check I have ever witnessed in my entire life, and I am living for every single second of it. So last Sunday night, I was getting ready for bed around 11 p.m. when I heard this weird tapping sound at my window. At first, I thought it was just the wind, or maybe a bird, but then I realized someone was throwing small rocks at my third-floor window. I looked outside and saw a figure standing on the sidewalk below, in what looked like the worst rainstorm we've had all month. It was Harry, soaking wet, no umbrella, no jacket, just standing there in the pouring rain throwing pebbles at my window like some kind of pathetic romantic movie scene. Except instead of looking like a charming love interest, he looked like a drowned rat who had been sleeping in his car for a week. I opened my window and yelled down at him to go away before I called the police. But Harry started shouting back up at me, and guys, what he said made my entire month. "Tanya, please, I need to talk to you. Stella is gone. She took everything and disappeared. I have nowhere else to go." I literally started cackling, like full-on evil villain laughter echoing through the neighborhood at midnight while this asshole stood in the rain begging for my help. The same man who had spent weeks rubbing his happiness in my face was now admitting that his perfect reunion had crashed and burned. I told him that sounded like a personal problem and started to close my window. But Harry completely lost his mind. He started screaming about how sorry he was, how he had made terrible mistakes, how he needed me to let him explain what had really happened with Stella. The whole thing was so ridiculous that I grabbed my phone and started filming him from my window. This grown man having a complete breakdown on the sidewalk in the middle of the night while begging his ex-girlfriend to save him from the consequences of his own actions. After about 10 minutes of listening to Harry's sob story from 3 floors up, I finally told him to come inside before the neighbors called the cops on both of us. Not because I felt sorry for him, but because I was dying to hear exactly how spectacularly his life had fallen apart. When Harry walked into my apartment lobby, he looked even worse up close. His clothes were completely soaked through, his hair was plastered to his head, and he had this desperate, wild look in his eyes that I had never seen before. We went up to my apartment and I made him stand on the mat by my front door so he wouldn't drip all over my carpet. Then I sat down on my couch with a cup of tea and prepared to enjoy the best entertainment I had ever been offered. Tanya, I know you have every right to hate me, but I need you to know that everything that happened with Stella was not what I thought it was going to be. I told him to start from the beginning and explain exactly how his perfect love story had turned into him standing outside my building at midnight like a homeless person. So apparently Stella had been planning her own little scam the entire time she was back in town. While Harry was busy bragging to his parents about using me as his walking ATM, Stella was quietly figuring out how to use him the same way. She had convinced Harry to put her name on his bank account so she could help him manage his finances better. She said she wanted to contribute to their shared future by taking over all the boring money stuff so Harry could focus on finding a better job. Harry, being the absolute genius that he is, thought this was a romantic gesture and handed over complete access to his accounts. Stella told Harry she was going apartment hunting for their new place together and needed his car to drive around and look at different neighborhoods. She said she would be gone all day, but would call him that evening to tell him about all the amazing places she had found for them. Harry waited all night for her call, all Wednesday, all Thursday. By Friday, he was starting to panic and went to the apartment complex where Stella had been staying with her friend. The friend told him that Stella had moved out Wednesday morning with all her stuff and hadn't left any forwarding address. That's when Harry checked his bank account and discovered that Stella had withdrawn every single penny he had. Not just the money I had given him over the past 8 months, but also the money he had gotten from selling some of his electronics, plus his rent money for next month. She had cleaned him out completely and vanished without a trace. I was trying so hard not to laugh while Harry told me this story. But guys, the irony was just too delicious. The man who had spent months manipulating me for money had been out-manipulated by someone who was way better at the game than he was. But wait, it gets even better, because Harry wasn't just broke, he was homeless. He had already given up his apartment lease because he and Stella were planning to move in together. All his stuff was packed in boxes in storage, and he couldn't afford the monthly fees to keep it there anymore. For the past week, Harry had been sleeping in bus stations and spending what little cash he had left on cheap motels and fast food. He was down to his last $40 and had no idea what he was going to do next. The best part was when he told me about his parents. Apparently, Leonard and Priscilla had been calling him every few days to check on how things were going with Stella. They were so excited about their son's romantic reunion and kept asking when they were going to meet their future daughter-in-law officially. Harry had been lying to them, saying everything was perfect and that he and Stella were just taking their time planning their next steps. But he knew he couldn't keep up the charade much longer, especially if they decided to visit again unexpectedly. If his parents found out that Harry was essentially homeless and had been scammed by the same woman they had toasted at dinner, they would lose their minds. Leonard would probably drag Harry back to Portugal to work in his cousin's restaurant for minimum wage under awful conditions. Harry was desperate to avoid that fate, which is why he had come crawling back to me at 2 in the morning begging for help. Tanya, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking you to please consider letting me stay here for just a few days while I figure out my next move. I'll sleep on the couch, I'll clean your apartment, I'll do whatever you want. I just need somewhere safe to stay while I try to put my life back together. That's when I completely lost it and started laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. I told Harry that he must be completely delusional if he thought I would lift a finger to help him after he had spent weeks taunting me about how amazing his life was without me. I reminded him of every cruel thing he had said, every time he had tried to make me feel small and pathetic, every moment he had tried to rub his happiness in my face. You called me a walking ATM, Harry. You told your parents I was pathetic and desperate. You said touching me made you sick. And now you want me to save you from the consequences of your own stupidity? Harry started crying then, actual tears streaming down his face while he begged me to reconsider. He said he had never meant any of those horrible things, that he had only said them to impress Stella and his parents, that deep down he had always cared about me. But I was done listening to his lies. I grabbed my phone and started filming him again. This pathetic, broken man sobbing in my living room while admitting that his perfect relationship had been a complete fraud. I posted the video on TikTok with the caption, POV, your manipulative ex comes crawling back after his girlfriend scams him the same way he scammed you, and watched it get hundreds of views within minutes. Harry noticed what I was doing and started panicking, begging me not to post anything about his situation because he was terrified of his parents finding out the truth. But that just made me want to document every second of his humiliation even more thoroughly. I told Harry that he had exactly 5 minutes to get out of my apartment before I called the police and reported him for trespassing. When he tried to argue, I reminded him that I had security footage of him harassing me multiple times over the past few weeks, and that Christine would be happy to testify about his aggressive behavior. Harry left my apartment that night looking like his entire world had collapsed around him, which, to be fair, it basically had. He had no money, no home, no girlfriend, and no prospects for fixing any of it without crawling back to his parents and admitting what a failure he was. The next morning, I woke up to find Harry sitting on the front steps of my building again. When he saw me coming down the stairs, he jumped up and tried to approach me one more time. Tanya, I know you're angry, but I'm literally begging you to reconsider helping me. I have nowhere else to turn. I'll pay you back everything I owe you as soon as I get back on my feet. I looked at this pathetic excuse for a human being and felt absolutely zero sympathy. This was the same man who had laughed with his family about how easy I was to manipulate. The same man who had told me I was never going to be enough for someone like him. I told Harry that he could try begging on the street corner if he needed money so badly, and that maybe his experience being used and discarded would teach him some empathy for other people. Then I walked past him to my car and drove to work, leaving him sitting there with his head in his hands. As of yesterday, Harry was still occasionally showing up outside my building, but he looks more defeated every time I see him. I heard from Christine that he's been asking other tenants in the building if they have any odd jobs he could do for cash. But the absolute best part happened 2 days ago, when Harry tried to get tough with me one last time. I was coming home from work and found him sitting on the building steps again, looking like complete garbage. When he saw me, he actually had the nerve to stand up and try to intimidate me. I'll remember this, Tanya. When I get back on my feet, you're going to be the one begging me to come back to you. You'll see what you lost. I literally burst out laughing right in his face. This homeless, broke, pathetic man who smells like he hasn't showered in weeks was trying to threaten me about his big comeback. I told him McDonald's was 2 blocks away, and maybe if he asked nicely, they'd give him some food. Or maybe not. I hope he enjoys wondering where his next meal is coming from and sleeping wherever homeless people sleep. Maybe now he'll understand what it felt like to be used and discarded by someone who never actually cared about him. Karma is absolutely beautiful, guys.